Several members of the TREW Crew recently made the trip out to Chicago for Automate. And on today's show, we're going to debrief about what they saw, heard, observed, and give you some best practices for your next trade show. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, TREW Marketing. TREW is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit trewmarketing.com. And now, on with our podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by three members of the TREW Crew, Lee Chapman, Kara Moon, and Kasey Tyring, and together we're going to debrief about their time at Automate 2024. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys are fresh back, like just got off the plane, hopping on to this. So thank you for doing that. I know your out of office is just freshly turned off. Anyway, I wanted to get you on while that was still fresh. So let's start by just talking a little bit about Automate. Like, what is the show? What's it about? I believe this is your first time to be there for all three of you. So tell me about your impressions of it, what you saw, what you remembered.
Yeah, so it was our first time to go. It was my first time to also be in McCormick Hall. I don't know how in all my National Instruments days, I'd never been to a trade show in Chicago at McCormick Hall. So I was super excited about that. And we had been hearing about Automate, I guess, for a couple of years. And we have several clients who their key personas go to this show. I love software and robots. So anyway, that they had hooked me with that. But we had a whirlwind 24 hours. And this was a 4-day event. We kind of picked the sweet spot of Tuesday and Wednesday and just hit the floor running. So they had 10,000 attendees, 800 plus exhibitors, I think 42 different conference like sessions or tracks and keynote speakers. Siemens, Rockwell, NVIDIA, robots everywhere. So the first impression was it was massive. I think, Kara, you said, like, how are we supposed to cover this in like 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon? So,
yeah, and like Kasey and I were like, dang, you could get lost in McCormick Place. But I'm like, I don't know how we're going to fit all this in. Like, you could get lost just walking through the booths. And I think a couple of times we're like, where are we?
Well, I can't believe, Lee, that in all your NI days, you never went to McCormick Place, because I probably went twice a year for like a decade. So I know quite well, I can see it in my mind how big that place is. And it's a great venue. And I saw the map for Automate, and indeed there were a lot of exhibitors and cool tech. Out of a sea of booths, what stood out to you? What booths just were really sticky?
Well, I know Kara and Kasey have this one, but one thing that I was going to say that made it a little bit more approachable because of the sheer scope of it was they had a really great app that I downloaded before I went. And so I sort of marked out of these like 800 exhibitors, we had like a hit list of 6. So it made it a little bit more approachable to focus on where we wanted to go. And then of course we got distracted because there were some pretty cool robots and there were some really interesting booth hooks. So Kara and Kasey have a couple they're going to talk about that were super fun.
Yeah, I think the booths that had the attractions or the activities, it really made it easier and more approachable to go up to those booths. And there was a couple. So Emily Ting, who we knew from IMS, had connected with us on LinkedIn, was like, come to our booth, do our activity. And she had this little ball on a string. And once I think people saw that we were all trying to get the ball to land on the like little platform on the string, they all wanted to try it too. So that was just a really simple attraction that was effective. And then Cognex had, they called it box get ball, but it was like shipping boxes that they then had in the hoop, which was another box, and it was timed. And if you won, you got a little basketball. But their whole booth had these bright yellow Nikes, so you could tell everyone who was working, which just made the whole booth stand out from everyone. couple other ones. There was another one that did like laser engraving. So you got to see their laser work with pins. And so they customized the pin for your name or whatever you wanted on there. So I know Kasey has a couple more, but yeah, there was a lot of great attractions and different marketing tactics.
Yeah, I liked the laser engraving for the pin because they were in a really tricky spot in the show floor. They were in the back, on the side, in the corner. They were the very last booth. So, but there was a line at their booth. So you're like, I wonder what that is. And everybody got personalized pins. So that was really smart marketing on their part. Another popular one that's, I think, everyone's favorite is Doosan Robotics. They do robotics for like a bunch of different industries. So I think that's what they were trying to showcase on their booth was like, they had cake decorating robots. They had robots that were making cocktails. They had robots that were making coffee. And then I think the star attraction was this like robotics drum set. And so every 30 minutes or every hour, there would be like a drummer doing the drum set that you could hear across the show floor. But the robot hands would also help. So a real cobot in action there. And then they also had like some automation or automotive different displays. So they were showcasing like all of their industries, which was really cool.
Okay, drumming, that would draw a lot of attention. I can imagine how loud that was. How wonderful. So
And
smart.
playing AC/DC Back in Black. It was very loud. I got a thing on my watch that was like, you're in a loud environment. I was like, really? Of course I am.
Or he did AC/DC. He's like, does anybody know the Blues Brothers? And it was just crickets. He's like, are you serious? You don't know the Blues Brothers? Like, how about AC/DC?
How funny. Well, that's the fortunate part about being in robotics is they lend themselves so well to good demos that are eye-catching, right? Because you have motion and cool tech all put together versus, some other industries where they have to try a little harder for sexy demos that also capture someone's eyes. So talk about a win-win. Were there many theaters inside of booths?
There were. We did not see very many of them, but I noticed on the schedule and in the app, there were several different sessions going on within the theaters. So we were really trying to give the little guys some love and stay around the fringes.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Well, what standout marketing tactics did you observe when you guys were walking around? Or maybe before and after the show too?
Well, I really liked, like Kara said, like the interactive parts. I mean, we played a lot of games. Some booths we would just bypass because there was just two people standing there that didn't really have maybe some pins on the table. So it's harder to approach them, but it's super easy to play like mini golf. I know they had one there, or get some swag that were really compelling. So that was a good marketing tactic for the show. After the show, I want to make sure to mention that there were some really good companies that were doing like same day email follow-ups. So there was one that was, we had a really good conversation with her at the booth. She was really like intelligent and really speaking well to that product. And then like not immediately after that we wouldn't see, but probably 6 hours later, there was an email and I remembered their name. I remembered their brand name. So yeah, I thought that was really smart because a lot of times marketers will wait for a week after, and then you really don't remember who's who at that point.
Yeah. So the timeliness of that helped you make that connection. And that makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah. I would say the same thing. I think the company we were talking to, Kasey, was Vinshin. And we just walked over and it was great. Immediately their like marketing manager came out and she greeted us and it was great. And like you said, she was able to speak to the product very well. And we were going to offer her business cards and she's like, oh, scan your badges. And then we got this immediate follow-up. It was great.
I think another thing that stood out to me is there was like limits on the number of swag giveaways or number of people that could get in line for the happy hour. So it really made you kind of watch the clock. Like if you wanted to go back to a booth and participate in something they had going on, it was a good draw to get you back there. So I know we walked in and we saw everybody walking around with these like glowing lightsabers. And we're like, what are these lightsabers? And we were told, oh, that's at the sick booth. They only give out 200 a day. You have to be there right when they open. And so I think that's a good way of getting people back to your booth if they maybe miss you during the main attraction.
Yeah. Interesting. I've always, when back in my trade show planning days, I would always struggle with, Do I want to have just some cool swag like that anybody would want? Or do I want to have an eye-catching demo that's more related to our products and services that pull in the right people so that we don't have a lot of, trash leads, if you will, where we're scanning badges that are like
Mhm.
the janitor, or whatever.
Right.
So there's always some balance to be had there. But I do like, you see a line, you want to know where are
Mhm.
people in that line, or you see this glowing thing, you want the glowy thing, bring home to your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, besides the robotics on the show floor, what other cool tech did you see as you're walking around?
So Kasey and I had a good time Wednesday morning at the Shunk booth, which was right kind of up front in the hall. And so a colleague, Ray Shu, from National Instruments, now works for a company called Ready Robotics. And they were partnering with Shunk. And so Shunk makes robotic arm grippers. And then Ready Robotics makes software where you can design and simulate and basically create like a digital twin. So they had a really great demo. NVIDIA was a big sponsor too. So it was really cool, innovative tech, explained in a really approachable way. And then from just a co-marketing standpoint, it was really brilliant how they brought all these brands together. They had multiple different people in their booth, so it brought a lot of credibility. And they had a really good end-to-end story to talk about. And they had a really cool robotics arm that was, showcasing the gripper, and then the software side by side, showing the simulation, and then how the simulation was learning from the actual in real life robot and passing information back. I think AI is baked in there as well. So just seeing kind of the hardware, the robotics hardware components, all the different software tool offerings and for design and simulation, and then the injection now of AI coming in and like improving things like machine vision, efficiencies, of course, and then just enhancing and making all of these, manufacturing, production, plant processes much more efficient. It was great to see all that in action across multiple booths. So if I was there trying to buy or learn more about these, I think, and we probably should have pulled some people aside, because I would have loved to have heard from somebody who was kind of there evaluating all of this, like what was really standing out to them, because there were so many impressive solutions that were there.
And I really like the idea of those three companies working together. It sounds like it was clear what their joint value proposition is. And talk about a money saver and a way to just make your marketing dollars go further through that collaboration. So that's another great marketing best practice. Okay, so aside from the show floor, you guys also went to what looked like a really fun after party from me seeing the photos on LinkedIn. So I think it was hosted by Chris Lukey of the Manufacturing Happy Hour and Jake Hall, the Manufacturing Millennial, and of course our friends over at Gray Solutions. So, I mean, looked like so much fun, you guys. I had some FOMO, I have to admit.
It was really cool from the moment we stepped in, and Kasey, lives in Chicago. So she was telling us how this venue, which was the Guinness, what's it called? Guinness Open Brewery. Anyway, it was pretty new and in the cool up and coming West Loop area. So they did a great job with the event venue. And then when we walked back to join the party, we got these really cool VIP bracelets that were like made out of this really cool metallic material. It was different. It wasn't like plastic or paper, so you felt a little more upscale. And then they had a really great selection of Guinness beers. And because we've done a lot of, I think, advanced like LinkedIn announcing, we were going to different places. I think as soon as Kasey turned around from getting her beer, people were like, "It's TREW marketing." And so anyway, we were with our people again. A lot of IMS love. So it was a great night.
I was
You always
impressed by how much IMS love there was. Like, there were so many people that were like, "We were at IMS and it was so cool and we can't wait to go back." And then they tell the person next to them, like, "You have to go to IMS." And they were excited to hear that the dates and all of that was going to be upcoming here soon.
That's great to see the industrial marketing community just come together and be more and more of a family as we see each other at these in-person events and, a lot of LinkedIn conversations and different digital events as well. So yeah. So if someone's listening and they don't know what the heck we're talking about when we say IMS, go over to the industrialmarketingsummit.com and you can learn more about the event. And just a quick plug, in late May, we'll be announcing the dates for 2025. Spoiler alert, it's coming back to Austin sometime around February, but you have to stay tuned to get the exact scoop. So I won't give it all away. So be looking for that announcement, like I said, in late May. Okay, a few more things about Automate before we wrap up. There was a keynote, right? So Kasey, I know you and Lee extended your stay by a day. Kara had to get out of there, and you cut the keynote. So what did you guys think? What was it all about?
Yeah, it was this professor from MIT. She does, I don't know the name of the robotics lab, but she was introduced as someone who has developed thousands of robots over her career. So she was really, really impressive. And the only thing that, well, a lot of things stood out, but one of the main things that stood out is the use of generative AI in robotics. So us in marketing, we know a lot about generative AI to create photos or write copy, but you can also use it to create robotics or like the code that goes into building robotics. So that was one thing that was really cool, but she had to reel everybody in kind of on like the fantasy of it all, because generative AI is not doesn't have a lot of physics that goes along with it. So she was giving us examples of like generative AI said that a robot can look like this, but it doesn't obey the laws of physics. So like coupling those two together is something she's working on. So it was just really interesting to see her history and everything she's working on with her students at MIT. But yeah, really impressive.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was cool that she was showing, to your point there, Kasey, was as they were training this robot about, holding a pitcher of water, the robot didn't understand that it had to hold the pitcher upright so the water didn't spill out. So, it was just holding the pitcher and all the water's, coming out. So it's just all these little steps, things that we as humans take for granted. So she was showing how they were training the robots by hooking up sensors to humans. So thinking of like preparing a meal in your kitchen, like all of the little things that you do to pull out a carrot and pull out your knife and chopping it, and like, so that these sensors were recognizing the muscle movement that's used, so that then they could train the robot to perform the same kitchen processes as a human would. So she had lots of videos, lots of really cool animations. And Wendy, you really would have liked this fish robot that she had. So this fish robot, and she had a little movie of it. And she was a scuba diver herself. So it showed her like deep down in her scuba gear with her robotic fish that could move exactly the way that a fish moves. And so it was swimming with this large school of fish, and the fish weren't even missing a beat because it was moving so similarly to them. So it was able to look at things like coral reefs and see how much of the coral reef may have been damaged. And then she had this really funny shot where it even found Nemo, and it had a shot of a Nemo-like fish. So just lots of really, in a 45-minute keynote, she covered a lot of application areas, and she made it really approachable for people who may not know as much about how these are being developed and how AI is going into them, but interesting and deep enough for people who did understand it to see kind of what's coming next in the evolution. So her name was Daniela Russ, and yeah, she's I think a computer scientist and robotist at MIT.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look her up. I want to see this robot fish. That's cool. Well, any last thoughts about Automate or advice to marketers listening that are in the throes of planning their next trade show? What would you advise them based on your experience?
I would say one thing that we were discussing as marketers, because obviously we have a very different lens when we're looking at trade shows, is when you're weighing if you should or shouldn't be in a trade show, there were a lot of conversations that we were having of people have to go just as a bare minimum. Like people were showing up. Of course you want leads, and of course you're like trying to do as much marketing around it in your presence as possible. But just being there sometimes is almost like table stakes. Like you have to be there if your competitors are all there. So that was kind of an interesting topic. But if you're starting at that base level, then you really have to have some creative marketing to gain those leads, or some sales initiatives to get your prospects to your booth. So even like why you should go was a big topic of conversation. I know Karen Levy talked about that quite a bit.
Yes. And for one of the groups that we were talking to, Emily Ting's company, they've been to the show many years before, but this was the first year that they'd had a technical session. And so that was really big for them. And that happened, I think it was at 8 a.m. in the morning before the keynote. And, they were like, gosh, we hope we have 5 people here. And I think they had like 35 or 40, and they were really, engaged. People who were willing to show up at your technical session at 8 a.m. I mean, that shows a lot of interest. So trying to kind of evolve your show plan year after year. So you're, changing maybe location, you're changing your booth offering, you're following up with these emails timely, and then you're trying to build in some kind of technical session or co-marketing hook, an after party event. I think we were there a really short time, but I think we saw a really good swath of kind of some best practices that a lot of companies had put into it. Because it's a huge investment of time, money, travel, all of that to have your team there. And so really planning in advance and having a really great strategy and then follow-up plan to maximize results, I think is key.
Yeah.
I think you can look at that from an attendee perspective too, because it was really overwhelming just walking in and having a plan of like, these are the people and booths that we want to see ahead of time, made it so much more approachable and easy to take in and able to use a little bit of time that we had. So that's something I'd recommend for anybody looking to attend Automate in the future is look at that exhibitor list and the trade show list ahead of time and really scout out the booths you want to go to.
Yeah, do that research. Try to set up some meetings in advance. I know, Lee, you had several meetings that you were able to, schedule ahead, but then give your schedule some flexibility for things on the fly to add. What do you think? Should we go back next year?
Definitely.
I think so. Next year it's in Detroit. So I gave our colleague Julia Holiday a shout out. We're coming to Detroit next year.
There you go. All right. More true marketing fun to be had with industrial marketers at Automate 2025. Love it. All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate you being here today. Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our e-newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.